I'm an improviser. I create music in the moment, calling upon all the forces that are around me. Music's the form that I use, and the saxophone is my weapon of choice. Some people call this spontaneous composition. I love it. It's super fun and embarrassingly easy. I wish what I did was cooler than that. Something a little more impressive, needed a little more oomph behind it. Now, a lot of people improvise. It's happening in a bunch of fields, not just in music. Dancers, they improvise when they develop choreography. Actors, they improvise scenes when they go off script. Athletes, they improvise when a play falls apart. Rappers, they improvise when they drop a little freestyle. All of you improvise. Everybody in here does it. Yeah. When you have a conversation with someone, you decide which language you're speaking. You determine the subject matter and the subject to whom you're speaking. And then you tailor through all the different vast vocabulary choices you have to find a select group of words that you know how to order and exchange with someone. The conversation you have happens off the top of your head. You didn't rehearse it. And it's different when you talk with your friends than it is when you talk to your folks, than it is when you talk to your boss. So everybody does it. I'm blessed to be able to do this for my career, to be a performer and an educator. In fact, a lot of people come to me and ask me, hey, how do I get better at improvising? What should I do? And as active and as, ingenuitive, I suppose, and creative as I can get with improvisation, there are still some major things in my everyday life that I just can't seem to get a handle on. I'll confess them to you. I can't read a map. People try to get a map out in front of me and show me the directions. We're going to go up here and there. You're going to go this way. And I feel kind of tapping out pretty early and saying, hey, sorry, but I've already kind of quit listening because I do not understand what you're saying. There's a little voice inside my head that confirms that from me. I don't know anything about cars. I guess I've had the privilege of owning some clunkers in my life that need to get run into the mechanic, okay? So they get taken into the garage, and the mechanic calls me back and said it's going to be this amount of money because it's this piece of equipment that failed and this other kind of thing. And man, I get nervous, and I already think, man, I just don't understand. My dad will tell me, why don't you pop the hood on your vehicle and take a look underneath there? So, I do it, but everything that I'm looking at looks like a Salvador Dali painting. Everything's kind of melting all together, and I just get kind of frozen. And I know that I don't know anything about cars. I'm reminded of that inside my head. I'm a nightmare in the kitchen. My mom's given me plenty of cookbooks. Try these recipes. So I'll pull one out. And I bet I stare at that list of ingredients for 5 or 6 minutes, getting this mental haze on my face. And boy, if I have to do more than one thing at a time in the kitchen, I got a pot over here and a pan right here. That is a recipe for disaster. So, all the creative work that I can do in my musical career versus these major issues I have in just everyday life. I'm a regular guy, right? I got things I got to do to get through everything, and so it's tough. This voice inside my head that keeps on registering with me to say, man, you don't know what you're doing. There was a guy named Stephen Pressfield, the author of The War of Art. He calls this voice the resistance. Everybody's got it. Everybody's got it. He says that the resistance acts objectively, unapologetically. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't care what you're doing, who you're doing it with, when you're doing it, or where you are when it's going down. The resistance sits inside of all of us. The idea behind working with it is to kind of circumvent it a little bit, hush that voice that's inside your head. It's something that young improvisers that I work with have many struggles with. So, how do I apply these things in the music world? Well, the first thing I tell music students is that apply limits to what you're working on. Don't try to do everything all at once. It becomes so overwhelming. There's a lot to do, and you're trying to be in the moment. It's a mindfulness thing, right? So there's too much going on. Limit it to a few things that you can manage. So, in music, I want a student to have priorities. Decide what's important to you. Not what the three most important things are to you, but what's the most important thing to you. So, for me, most important thing for me is my sound. I want to make sure the sound of my instrument is authentic, is immediately recognizable, and helps convey my feelings and my emotions in this abstract art form. So I have a little checklist I go through to make sure I'm playing with a good sound. Relaxed across here, loosen the hips, open the throat, relax the oral cavity, ease the gaze on my face, crown of my head goes to the sky. I'm using fast, warm air and driving it through the horn. These are all things that are part of it, right? And so when I focus on my sound, I don't think about anything else, just the way that I sound. All right, I'll take that. So that is me just zeroing in on my sound. I'm not worried about anything that I'm playing at all. I didn't know what I was going to play. I improvised it, okay? But I'm zeroing in on the one priority I've made. It doesn't move. I don't change that priority. The next thing that I worry about when I'm improvising is having an essential skill secured, mastered, okay? Now, when you get into music, you're talking about all kinds of different facets of music. There's a bunch of stuff. What's the most important thing in music? Oh, man, the list goes forever, and it kind of just depends on who you are and what your preferences are, okay? For me, most students ask me, which notes should I play? So, I just figure I'll just deal with notes. So now I'm dealing with notes and making sure I'm playing with a good sound. In music, we've got these things called scales. A major scale corresponds with a major key, a happy, joyful sound. In the key of D, these are the notes that work with the D major scale. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and then D again, and just goes on and on. I have to know what those notes are when I see the sign for D major. I have to know how to execute them on my saxophone. I want to make sure that I'm comfortable executing that scale of notes all over my horn, sometimes sliding around next note to next note, sometimes just kind of jumping around and having fun. Cool. So now I feel like I've mastered the D major scale. That's a happy sound. There are two other scale types that work in the key of D. You've got D minor, a sad sound. That's taken the third note, that F sharp, and dropped it a half step. Did the same thing with the C sharp, dropped it to C. If I'm going to play a D dominant scale, that corresponds with a dominant chord, and that's kind of a curious yet pulling sound. Improvisation It's as complex and as sophisticated as you want to make it. Feel like you got these 3 things mastered? That's good. They work with the 3 primary chord types we see in music. There are 11 other keys, so you can get on those. And there is boundless numbers of patterns and permutations that work with all those scales. But I just picked 1 key and 1 sound and 1 thing to deal with. I wasn't concerned with anything else I was doing musically, just those notes. A third principle for me, repetition. Once is a fluke. Twice could prove intent. Being able to do things over and over again, that's important, a skill to be able to have for improvising. So I've written some notes out here. They kind of make a little shape. And so it's a little lick that we talk about having in jazz music. So I'll play that for you. I like the shape, I like the design, I think it sounds cool. When I go through it over and over and over again, it does a couple things for me. It appeals to a variety of learning styles. Maybe it's good for me to see it. What if I see all these notes and it locks into my mind's eye? Helps me to hear it. Maybe I absorb information through my inner ear, and that's the way I get it. Maybe it being a tangible thing, applying it to my instrument, locks into some muscle memory, and feeling it is what's good for me. I don't know. But I'm able to tap into all 3 of those things by repeating this lick a million times. Practice doesn't necessarily make perfect, but practice makes permanent. So, in the improvising world, strategies I use for myself and that I help young improvisers with are priorities, essentials, and repetition. A couple years ago, it dawned on me, why am I not taking my own advice here? Priorities. Picking one thing that's important. When someone shows me that map, they're trying to give me some directions, I want to figure out, okay, are we going north or south? Is there a major road involved here that I can sort of follow along with as you talk to me about stuff? Are there landmarks, important things that I can kind of clue into? Gives me a fighting chance understanding one of these map things. The essentials. When the transmission falls out of my car and the mechanic says it's because the fluids curdled when they went back into the transmission because your radiator blew out in the front. I've blown a couple radiators before. They're in the front of the engine and they cool all the liquids that go through there. I've learned this by having this happen a couple different times, but then now I understand that that's how it all connects. I slowly am able to understand some of those essential pieces that are involved in this whole engine process of making a vehicle work. And in repetition. I make a mean spaghetti sauce. A little bit of turkey, a little bit of sausage, 2 different types of tomatoes, some olive oil, garlic, unless you're not into garlic, and we can hold that out. And an extra special little pinch of something I put in there. I do a good job with it because I've made it a bunch. Make it all the time. I know how much will fit in the pan. I know how much to prepare for who's eating. I even go to the grocery store. I know exactly where to go to grab all those ingredients. We eat a lot of spaghetti at my house because I've figured out how to do it. And all the while, these life hacks I'm grabbing from creative thought in the music world have helped me silence the inner critic. That voice that tells me, not able to do it. That barrier I've thrown up in front of myself. I'm able to push beyond that and improvise through life. Thank you.
13th, 2012.